Leon stood inside the small wooden town hall, her hands shaking even though she tried her best to keep still. Snow kept falling outside, covering the roofs and the dusty road in a white blanket. It was Christmas Eve, but nothing about the night felt warm to her. She had imagined Christmas in America would be full of lights, happiness, and maybe hope. Instead, she was standing beside a cowboy she barely knew, with a contract on the table and people watching her as if she had no choice. She didn't understand every word the elders said, but she understood enough. They kept repeating that she had no place to stay, no money, and no family to protect her in this remote town. If she didn't agree to marry the cowboy named Daniel, she would be sent away with nothing but her thin coat and the small bag she carried. She didn't want to cry, but fear pressed on her chest like a stone. She had traveled across the ocean to start a new life, only to find herself trapped by the same kind of pressure she had tried to escape. She looked at Daniel, searching his face for a clue. He was tall, with tired eyes and a calm expression. He didn't look angry or demanding. In fact, he looked uncomfortable with the whole situation. But that didn't calm her completely. People could look kind and still have expectations she could not meet. The elder pushed the paper forward. "Sign," he said slowly, pointing at the line where her name should go. Leon felt her heartbeat rise. She didn't want to be married like this. She had dreamed of choosing her future with her own hands, but she also knew she had nowhere else to go. If she refused, the cold outside would swallow her. She lowered her eyes and took the pen. Her hand trembled. Before she signed, Daniel stepped forward. "You don't have to do it if you don't want to," he said softly. His voice surprised her. It was gentle, almost careful. She looked up at him, confused. If he didn't want this, why was he here? Why did the town say he offered to take her in? The elder interrupted, insisting the decision had already been made for her safety. Leon felt trapped between the voices. Finally, she signed. The moment the ink touched the paper, her heart sank, as if a door had closed behind her forever. Daniel signed next, though he didn't look pleased. When the ceremony ended, the townspeople clapped lightly, as if they had solved a problem. To them, the marriage was a simple answer. To Leon, it felt like her life had been handed away. Daniel walked outside with her. The snow was thicker now, falling in soft flakes that landed on her hair and coat. She hugged herself to stay warm. Daniel noticed and took off his own thick winter coat, gently placing it around her shoulders. She wanted to refuse out of pride, but the cold was too sharp, so she let him help. "My cabin is just outside town," he said quietly. "You can stay inside where it's warm. I'll make sure you're comfortable." His kindness made her uneasy. She didn't know what he expected in return. She had heard stories about women who were brought to America and treated unfairly. She wondered if this was her fate too. But Daniel didn't touch her, didn't rush her, and didn't speak like someone who wanted control. He simply guided her toward his horse, letting her walk instead of forcing her to ride if she didn't feel comfortable. The walk to the ranch was long and quiet. Leon watched the snow-covered land stretch in every direction. The cold air made her breath turn white, and her feet felt numb. Daniel stayed close enough to shield her from the wind, but kept a respectful distance. When they reached the small wooden cabin, warm light glowed from the windows. The sight of it made her feel both relief and fear. Relief because she wouldn't freeze tonight. Fear because she didn't know what kind of life waited inside. Daniel opened the door and stepped aside, letting her enter first. The cabin was simple but warm. A fire burned in the stone fireplace, filling the room with a soft glow. There was a wooden table, a small kitchen area, and a single bed on one side of the room. She froze when she saw the bed, her mind jumping to uncomfortable thoughts. Daniel noticed and quickly spoke. "You can take the bed," he said. "I'll sleep in the barn." Her eyes widened. She didn't expect that. "Barn?" she repeated softly, unsure if she heard correctly. He nodded. Yes. You need rest. You've had a long day. She didn't know what to say. She wanted to ask why he was helping her so much, why he didn't act like the people who pressured her earlier, but she didn't want to ask too many questions on the first night. She placed her small bag near the wall and stood awkwardly, not sure what she was allowed to do. Daniel made her a warm bowl of soup. She held the bowl with both hands, letting the heat warm her fingers. The taste was simple, but comforting. He sat across the table, not staring at her, not studying her, simply giving her space. When she finished eating, he showed her where extra blankets were kept. Then he put on his coat and hat. I'll be outside if you need anything, he said. Don't worry. You're safe here. Safe. The word echoed in her mind, but she wasn't ready to trust it yet. After he left, she sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wooden floor. The room was peaceful, but her thoughts were noisy. She wondered what her family back home would think if they knew she married a cowboy on Christmas. They would never believe her. She barely believed it herself. She lay down on the bed slowly, expecting her fear to keep her awake. Instead, exhaustion pulled her into a deep sleep. In the middle of the night, she woke up briefly. The cabin was quiet, and the fire had dimmed. She heard distant wind outside and imagined Daniel sleeping in the cold barn because of her. She didn't understand him. She didn't understand why he didn't treat her like someone who owed him something. Morning came with golden light shining through the window. Leon sat up, feeling slightly unsure if everything was real. She looked around the cabin, noticing small details she missed before. A shelf full of handmade wooden carvings, a coat hanging neatly, a book placed beside a lantern. The place felt lived in, but not messy. She wondered what kind of man Daniel truly was. The door opened softly, and Daniel entered carrying a small basket of firewood. He paused when he saw her awake. "Good morning," he said, his voice warm. She nodded silently. She still didn't know how to speak freely around him. He set the firewood down and started the fire again. The warmth filled the room quickly. "I hope you slept well," he said. She nodded again, unsure how much English she could manage without making a mistake. He didn't pressure her to speak. Instead, he made breakfast and set a plate in front of her. She watched him move around the kitchen area with quiet care. As she ate, she kept thinking about the contract she signed. She felt trapped, but she also sensed something unusual. Daniel didn't act like a man who wanted power over her. If anything, he acted like someone afraid of making her uncomfortable. After breakfast, he took his hat and glanced at her with calm eyes. "I'll be working outside today. You can rest. You don't have to do anything." She blinked in surprise. No chores, no demands, no conditions. When he stepped outside, she moved to the window and watched him walk toward the barn. Snow still covered the ground, but the sunlight made it sparkle. She saw him feeding the animals, fixing something near the fence, and moving with steady grace. He wasn't lazy or careless. He worked hard, alone, in silence. For the first time since she arrived in America, Leon felt a small spark of curiosity instead of fear. She didn't know if she could trust him yet, but she could not deny one thing. Daniel was not like the men she had been warned about. He was different, and that difference made her wonder what kind of future waited for her in this quiet ranch she was now forced to call home. The first day ended with the same quiet kindness. As night fell again, Leon realized something she never expected. She wasn't scared of Daniel. She was scared of the unknown, of the past, of the world outside. But Daniel himself, he felt like someone who carried his own pain, his own secrets, and his own gentle strength. And without knowing it, That gentle strength was the start of something that would change both their lives forever. Leon woke up the next morning to the soft sound of snow tapping against the window. The ranch was quiet, so quiet that she could hear her own breath. She sat up in the warm bed, still trying to understand why Daniel had given it to her while he slept in the cold barn. Nothing he did made sense to her. She had met kind people before, but none who stepped aside so fully, asking for nothing in return. It made her feel safe and uneasy at the same time, because she didn't know what he truly wanted. She stood up slowly, wrapped herself in the warm blanket he had left for her, and looked around the cabin. It looked simple but clean. Daniel's life was not large or fancy, but everything felt honest. A small table with 2 chairs, a shelf full of handmade carvings, a few books, and a coat rack by the door. She wondered how long he had lived this quiet life alone. When she stepped outside, the cold air touched her face sharply, but the morning sun made the snow sparkle like tiny diamonds. Daniel was already up, feeding the horses. He moved quickly, his breath turning white as he worked. He didn't see her at first. She watched him from a few steps away, surprised by how hard-working he was. In her mind, she had imagined cowboys to be loud or rough, but Daniel looked calm, steady, and peaceful. He finally turned and saw her standing there with the blanket wrapped around her shoulders. "Good morning," he called out gently. He didn't shout or wave wildly. His voice was soft, like he didn't want to scare her. She nodded, still unsure how much English she could speak without making mistakes. "Morning," she said quietly. "You don't have to work today," he told her. "You're still settling in. Rest inside if you want." She didn't answer right away. A part of her felt strange letting him do everything while she did nothing. But another part of her didn't know what she was allowed to do. She didn't want to ruin anything or make him angry. Back home, people often judged newcomers harshly. Here, she wasn't sure what the rules were. She stood there for a while, watching him finish feeding the animals. When he returned to the porch, he brushed snow off his hat and looked at her with a thoughtful expression. "I know this situation wasn't fair for you," he said softly. "I just want you to feel safe. Safe." He kept saying that word, and every time he said it, something warm flickered inside her chest. She didn't fully trust it yet, but she wanted to. Daniel walked inside with her and warmed his hands near the fire. "I'll make breakfast," he said, already moving toward the kitchen area. She felt guilty watching him do all the cooking. "I help," she said suddenly. He turned, surprised. "You don't have to." "I want," she said quietly, pointing to the counter. He smiled gently. "All right, if you want to." Working beside him felt strange at first. She didn't know where the cups were or how he liked things arranged. But Daniel never got frustrated. If she put something in the wrong place, he simply showed her kindly. As she chopped vegetables, she noticed how careful he was in everything he did. He never rushed her. He never spoke in a demanding tone. It made her wonder again why someone like him agreed to the forced marriage. After breakfast, Daniel stepped outside again to work on the fence. Leon watched him through the window, thinking deeply. She remembered the elder's words from before. He offered to take you in. But Daniel himself had told her she didn't have to marry him if she didn't want to. The pieces didn't match, and she didn't know who to believe. When the sun climbed higher, she decided to take a small step. She put on the coat he had given her and walked outside. Daniel was kneeling by a broken rail, hammer in hand. When he noticed her, he stood up, surprised but not upset. "Everything all right?" he asked. She nodded. "I help," she said again, pointing to the tools. He hesitated. "It's cold. You don't have to be out here." But she stepped closer, determined. Back home, she had done plenty of manual work. She wasn't weak. She wasn't helpless. She had traveled across the world alone. She could fix a fence, too. Daniel noticed the confidence in her eyes and finally nodded. "All right," he said with a gentle smile. "I'll show you." They worked side by side. She held the rail steady while he hammered the nails. When she slipped a little on the icy ground, he reached out quickly to steady her, but let go the moment she found balance. He didn't grip her tightly or keep holding her. He respected her space in a way she wasn't used to. As the hours passed, she grew more curious about him. She gathered the courage to ask, Why you say yes?" He paused, lowering his hammer. "To the contract?" She nodded. He leaned against the fence, thinking carefully before answering. "Because I didn't want them to send you away," he said quietly. "It wasn't right. You looked scared. I thought, if I signed, at least you'd have a safe place to stay until things got sorted out." She stared at him, stunned. She had expected something else. Maybe that he needed help on the ranch, or he wanted companionship, or he had some agreement with the town. But he said none of that. He said he did it because she looked scared. "No wife?" she asked slowly. Daniel shook his head gently. "Not like this?" he said. "Not forced? Not unhappy? I don't want anything from you." His words hit her like warm wind in winter. She didn't know how to respond, so she just looked down at the snow, feeling something soften inside her chest. Later in the afternoon, he made tea for both of them. They sat quietly inside the cabin. Daniel didn't ask questions about her past. He didn't try to dig into her memories or force her to speak. Instead, he let her speak only when she wanted to. After several minutes, Leon whispered, "In my home, I work long hours. No rest. No choice." Her voice shook slightly. "Here, you give me bed, food, peace." She looked at him with confused eyes. "Why?" Daniel took a deep breath. "Because everyone deserves that," he said simply. They sat quietly for a few minutes, the fire crackling softly. Leon studied his hands, rough from ranch work but steady. She wondered what kind of life he lived before she arrived. As evening came, she noticed something. Daniel kept reaching into his pocket but never taking anything out. It was as if he carried something he wasn't ready to show her. When she stepped close to ask about it, he quickly moved his hand away, smiling faintly. "Just something I'm working on," he said. "Not finished yet." Leon didn't understand, but curiosity sparked inside her. Dinner was simple: stew, bread, and warm tea. Afterward, Daniel brought out extra logs and set them by the fire so she would stay warm through the night. "I'll be in the barn," he said again. She looked at him, her eyes full of confusion. "Barn. Cold." He shrugged lightly. "I've slept there for years. It's all right." "But you married," she said, pointing between them. "Yes," Daniel answered softly, "but only on paper. You don't owe me anything. I won't make you uncomfortable." His words sank deep into her heart. That night, as she lay in the warm bed again, she couldn't sleep right away. She kept thinking about his kindness, his patience, and the strange mystery of the small object he kept hiding in his pocket. For the first time, she didn't feel like a trapped woman. She felt like someone being given space. Space to breathe, to think, to simply exist without fear. And as the snow fell gently outside, Leon realized something quietly powerful. Daniel wasn't just offering her shelter. He was offering her dignity, and that was something she had not felt in a very long time. Leon woke on the third morning to the sound of wind brushing against the cabin walls. The fire had burned to soft embers, glowing faintly like sleepy stars. She sat up slowly, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. She had slept well again, something she hadn't expected when she first stepped into Daniel's cabin. Safety was still a new feeling for her, and she held it carefully, afraid it might disappear. When she stepped outside, the cold air touched her face sharply. Daniel was already awake, as he always was, working in the yard with his quiet determination. She watched him for a moment before he noticed her. "Morning," he called gently. She nodded. "Morning." He carried a small bucket of warm water toward her. "For your hands. It's too cold today." She blinked in surprise. No one had ever prepared warm water for her before. She dipped her fingers into it and felt warmth travel slowly up her arms. Daniel didn't stay staring. He went right back to work, respecting her space as always. As she watched him repair the fence, she realized something. For a man who had taken responsibility for her, he didn't act like someone who believed he owned anything, not her decisions, not even the path she walked on. It puzzled her deeply. Back home, she had met people who wanted control, attention, or something in return. But Daniel, he wasn't like that. If anything, he kept distance to protect her comfort. After breakfast, he brought her a small pair of gloves he had stitched himself. The stitches were uneven, a little rough, but full of effort. "For when you help outside," he said. She put them on slowly, touched by the care. They were warmer than they looked. The rest of the morning passed quietly. Leon helped gather firewood, carrying small bundles while Daniel carried the larger ones. When she slipped on the snow, he reached out fast, catching her elbow gently. He didn't hold on longer than needed. His touch was steady, respectful, and quick to let go. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded, brushing snow off her coat. "Yes, I strong," she said proudly. He smiled. "I can see that." They continued working until the sun climbed higher. Leon noticed something about Daniel. He didn't talk much about himself. She knew nothing about his past except that he worked hard and lived alone. She wondered what his life had been like before she arrived. Around midday, she gathered the courage to ask, "You always alone here?" Daniel paused, leaning on the fence. Snowflakes landed on his hat, melting slowly. "For a long time, yes," he answered. "It's just been me and the animals." "No family?" she asked softly. He shook his head. "Not anymore. My parents passed many years ago. I had a friend or two, but people move. Life changes." She listened quietly. She understood loneliness. She had felt it crossing the ocean, walking through unfamiliar streets, and lying alone in cold rooms. Now she realized Daniel had carried that same empty silence for years. After a long pause, he added, "I once asked someone to marry me." Leon lifted her head slightly, surprised. She didn't expect him to share something so personal. "What happened?" she asked. Daniel took a slow breath. She said no. She didn't want a life on a ranch. She wanted a man with money and a future that looked bigger than this place. Leon looked around. The cabin was small. The land was quiet, but she didn't think it was worthless. She saw honesty here, effort, peace. "She hurt you?" she asked carefully. Daniel shrugged a little. "It was long ago. I learned to live with it." His simple words carried deep weight. She could hear pain in the quiet spaces he left between each sentence. But he never tried to hide it with anger. He simply accepted it, the way he accepted the snow, the work, and the long days alone. For the first time, Leon saw him not as a man who saved her, but as a man who had been hurting quietly without telling anyone. She looked down at her hands. "I have story too," she whispered. He didn't push her. He waited gently, letting her speak only when she felt ready. "In my home," she began softly, "I work every day. Long hours. No rest. Always someone say hurry, hurry. I send money to my family. I try help." Her voice shook a little. "I come to America for better life, but many people take money, change promise. I feel lost." Daniel listened without interrupting. His eyes were calm, steady, patient. "No one kind to me. she added quietly. Until you. He looked away, almost embarrassed. I just did what any decent person should do. Leon shook her head gently. Not everyone is decent. Their eyes met for a moment, not as strangers, not as forced husband and wife, but as two people who understood quiet suffering. After lunch, Daniel went to the barn to check on the animals. Leon followed him, wanting to help. The barn smelled of hay and wood. Horses stood calmly, their breaths warm in the cold air. Leon liked it there. It felt peaceful. As she moved closer, she noticed something she hadn't seen before. A small wooden box on a shelf, half hidden under a cloth. She didn't touch it, but curiosity flickered. Was this the object Daniel kept reaching for in his pocket? Or something connected to it? When Daniel turned, he noticed her looking at the shelf. Something catch your eye? He asked gently. She pointed at the cloth. What is that? He hesitated for a heartbeat, then walked over and covered it more completely. Just something I'm working on, he said with a small smile. Not ready yet. His tone wasn't defensive. It was soft, almost shy. Leon wondered what he was hiding and why he seemed nervous about it. Later in the afternoon, she felt tired and returned to the cabin. Daniel came in soon after, dusted with snow. He warmed the room quickly, setting new logs in the fireplace. The orange light filled the room, making it feel safe and calm. Leon sat at the table watching him. She had learned something important today. Daniel was not trying to make her stay. He was giving her the chance to breathe, to heal, to understand herself again. As evening came, she made tea for both of them. He accepted the cup with a small smile. They sat quietly, listening to the fire crackle. Silence between them no longer felt heavy. It felt warm. After a long moment, she asked softly, "The thing in your pocket, it for me?" Daniel froze a little, almost like a child caught hiding something. Then he gently touched the pocket where the small wooden box usually stayed. "Yes," he admitted. "But I'm waiting for the right time." She tilted her head. "Why wait?" He looked at her with honest eyes. "Because I don't want to give you anything that feels like pressure. I want you to feel ready." Her heart warmed in a way she didn't expect. He wasn't hiding something bad. He was waiting for her comfort. That night, when he prepared to go back to the barn, she stopped him for the first time. "You don't have to sleep there," she said softly. "It very cold." He shook his head with a gentle smile. "You need the space more than I do. And I'm all right. I've slept out there many winters." She looked down at her hands. "You kind," she whispered. Daniel paused at the door, just trying to do right. As he stepped into the snow again, Leon stood by the window, watching him walk away. For the first time since arriving in America, she didn't feel like a burden. She didn't feel like a stranger. She felt seen. She went to bed with a warm heart and a curious mind. What was Daniel hiding in that pocket? Why did he look nervous every time she asked? And why did she suddenly care so much about the answer? As the night grew quiet, one thing became clear. Her fear was no longer the loudest voice in her heart. Something new, gentle, and unexpected was beginning to take its place. Now fell gently outside the cabin window as Christmas morning slowly brightened the sky. Leon woke to a peaceful silence, the kind that felt soft and safe. She lay still for a moment, letting her eyes adjust to the warm, golden light from the fireplace. Today felt different, though she didn't yet know why. Her heart felt light, almost expectant, as if something important waited just beyond the morning chill. She wrapped the blanket around her shoulders and stepped toward the window. The world outside was covered in fresh snow, untouched and sparkling. It looked like a painting, quiet, bright, and full of promise. She wondered if this was how Christmas was meant to feel, something she had only seen in pictures before. Not loud celebrations, not crowds, not lights, but calmness, warmth, safety. When she opened the door and stepped outside, the cold air touched her face gently. Daniel was already in the barn, working as always. She watched him from the porch for a moment. Something about him seemed different today. His movements were slower, almost thoughtful, like he was waiting for something too. When he noticed her, he waved lightly. "Morning," he called out. "Morning," she replied, her voice soft but warm. He walked over, brushing snow off his gloves. She noticed he was carrying something small in his coat pocket again, the same place he always touched without showing her what he kept there. "I have something for you," he said quietly. Her heart skipped. She didn't know why her breath suddenly felt lighter. She waited, but he seemed hesitant, almost nervous. "After breakfast," he added. She nodded, wondering what kind of gift a cowboy would give a woman he didn't ask for, a woman he barely knew, a woman who had arrived to his ranch because of pressure, not choice. Inside the cabin, they warmed the room with fresh firewood. Leon helped him make breakfast. Rice porridge she prepared her way, and simple eggs Daniel cooked the way he liked them. They ate quietly. Not tense, not distant. Just peaceful. Every small sound felt gentle. The spoon tapping the bowl, the soft wind outside, the fire crackling slowly. After they finished eating, Daniel stood up slowly, took a deep breath, and reached into his coat. Leon's heart pounded. She wasn't sure if she should sit or stand. She held the edge of the table nervously. He pulled out a small wooden box, polished, simple, beautifully carved. She recognized the careful details. It was the same kind of wood as the carvings on the shelf. So this was what he had been working on all those days, hiding it from her. He placed the box gently on the table in front of her. "This is for you," he said. Leon stared at it, her breath caught. His hands were steady now, but she could tell he had been holding on to this moment with deep thought. "Open it," he encouraged softly. She lifted the lid slowly, afraid it might break the moment. Inside, she saw two things, a small wooden bird and a folded set of papers. She picked up the bird first. It was carved with such care, smooth wings, gentle curves, tiny detailed feathers. It was beautiful, delicate, and full of effort. She held it in her hand and felt something warming her chest. "I carved it," Daniel said quietly. "I thought maybe it could remind you of freedom." She touched the wings gently. "Freedom?" she whispered. He nodded. "Yes, because you deserve it." She looked down again, then picked up the papers. Her eyes scanned the words slowly. It took her a few seconds to understand them clearly. And when she did, her entire body froze. They were release papers, papers ending the marriage contract, legal freedom. Her hands shook as she held them. "This," she whispered in disbelief. "This break marriage?" Daniel nodded softly. "Yes, it makes you free. No contract, no pressure, no obligation." She stared at him, her eyes wide with shock. She had expected many things from him. Good things, confusing things, kind things. But she never, not even for a moment, expected this. "You give me freedom?" she asked, her voice barely holding steady. He nodded again. "It's your life, Leon. You should choose what happens to it. Not the town, not the elders, not me." Her throat tightened. "But why?" She placed her hand over her chest. "Why you do this for me?" Daniel looked down for a moment, gathering his thoughts. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but strong. "Because I didn't want to be another person who took away your choices." He took a slow breath. "You told me what your life was like before. The pressure, the work, the fear. I didn't want to add to that. I wanted to give you a place to breathe. And now, I want you to have the choice. If you stay, stay because you want to. If you leave, leave because it's your freedom. Either way, I just want you to be safe and happy. Leon's eyes filled with tears she didn't expect. Not sad tears, not frightened ones, but deep, overwhelmed tears she couldn't hold back. She looked at the bird again, a bird with open wings, a symbol of flight. It was more than wood, it was meaning, care, respect. She wiped her eyes quickly, trying not to cry too much. He didn't step closer. He didn't reach out or try to comfort her forcefully. He waited quietly, giving her space even in this moment. "You think I want to leave?" she whispered softly. Daniel looked away as if protecting himself from disappointment. "If you choose to, I'll help you. I'll make sure you're safe. I just want you to have the power to choose." She stared at him, really stared, and saw the truth in his eyes. This man, this quiet cowboy, wasn't giving her a gift to push her away. He was giving her freedom because he cared for her dignity more than his own comfort. No one had ever done that for her before. No one had ever given without asking. Slowly, she folded the papers and placed them back inside the box. Then she held the bird in her hands again, pressing it gently against her heart. "I don't want to go," she said softly. Daniel's breath caught. His eyes snapped back to hers, filled with surprise. "I choose stay," she said, her voice trembling with courage. "Not because papers say, not because contracts say, because I feel safe, I feel peace, and I feel you are a good man." Daniel looked stunned, not excited, not triumphant, and just quietly overwhelmed. "You're sure?" he asked softly. She nodded. "Yes, I stay, if you want to." A slow, warm smile spread across his face, the kind of smile that held both relief and hope. "I want you to stay," he said quietly, "but only if it makes you happy." She stepped closer to him for the first time, not out of fear or obligation, but out of choice. Her voice softened. "You give me freedom. You give me respect. You give me warm place, warm heart." She touched the wooden bird again. "This is shocking gift, beautiful gift. No one ever give me freedom before." Daniel swallowed gently, emotion showing for the first time. "Then we can start again," he said. "If you want. Not as a forced agreement, but as two people building something together." She nodded slowly, her heart full. Yes, start again. And for the first time since she arrived in America, she stepped into his arms. Not because she had to, not because anyone told her to, but because she felt safe enough to choose it. Outside, the snow kept falling softly, as if blessing their small cabin with a peaceful beginning. Leon placed the wooden bird on the mantel later that evening, letting it face the window, wings open as if ready to fly. To her, it was no longer just a carving. It was a symbol of the life she now chose freely. A life that began with fear, but grew into trust, warmth, and a quiet, unexpected love she never thought she would find on a lonely Christmas ranch.